Arjun Malhotra walked into the sunlight, believing it was just another ordinary morning, unaware that Rahul Varma had already been watching his every move. The city knew them only as passing faces in a crowd, two strangers sharing the same streets. But by the end of the day, their names would be permanently tied together by violence caught on camera. What began as routine steps toward work would turn into a public execution in broad daylight, exposing a chilling truth about how closely danger can hide behind familiar routines. The morning began with a sense of routine that felt almost comforting. The city was already awake, breathing through the rhythm of footsteps, engines, and distant horns. Shop shutters lifted one by one, and street vendors arranged their goods as if following an invisible schedule. Office workers moved with quiet urgency, focused on their destinations rather than the people around them. Above the streets, traffic cameras blinked steadily, recording everything without judgment. These machines had seen countless mornings just like this one, each blending into the next without meaning or memory. In a modest apartment building near a busy junction, a man stepped outside and locked his door behind him. He followed the same path he had taken for years, crossing the same streets at the same times. His routine was so predictable that it went unnoticed by everyone except the lenses watching from above. He paused briefly at a corner, waiting for the signal to change, unaware that his movements were being captured from multiple angles. To the city, he was just another figure in motion, easily replaceable in the endless flow of people. Nothing about the scene felt dangerous. The sunlight was strong, reflecting off shop windows and parked cars. Children laughed nearby, and the sound of conversation floated through the air. Life continued with its usual confidence, blind to what was coming. What no one realized was that this ordinary routine had been studied carefully. Each step, each pause, and each turn had already been noted and remembered. The cameras were not just recording a normal morning. They were collecting the final peaceful moments before everything changed. Within minutes, this calm would shatter, and the footage from this quiet beginning would become the opening evidence of a crime that no one could ignore. The man continued along the crowded street, blending easily into the flow of people heading toward their daily responsibilities. Behind him, another presence moved with equal ease, careful not to stand out. This person kept a measured distance, adjusting speed whenever the crowd shifted. On the surface, there was nothing unusual. Cities are full of strangers walking in the same direction, sharing space without sharing purpose. Yet the cameras later showed how deliberate each movement was, how the distance never truly changed. At one intersection, the followers slowed down, allowing several pedestrians to pass in between. A quick glance toward a shop window created the appearance of distraction, but the reflection revealed focused eyes tracking the man ahead. Every stoplight, every crossing was used as an opportunity to observe. The follower knew where the cameras were placed and how long each one watched before the next took over. This awareness suggested planning rather than chance. The crowd offered cover, and the noise of the city masked intent. As the man turned onto a narrower street, the follower mirrored the move without hesitation. This area had fewer shops and less foot traffic, yet it was still open and well lit. The choice of location was no accident. It provided just enough space to act without drawing immediate attention. From one camera angle, the follower almost disappeared, hidden by passing vehicles and other pedestrians. From another, the shadow remained constant, always present but never obvious. Investigators would later pause on these moments, realizing how close danger had been for so long. The city had unknowingly become part of the plan, its crowds and cameras used as tools rather than obstacles. What looked like an ordinary walk was, in truth, a carefully managed pursuit, moving steadily toward a moment that had already been decided. The street was alive with movement when everything shifted in a matter of seconds. People walked past each other without concern, focused on phones, conversations, or the simple act of getting somewhere on time. The man slowed slightly near the edge of the pavement, adjusting his pace to avoid a passing group. It was a small, ordinary action, the kind that happened thousands of times a day. No one noticed how the space around him briefly opened, creating a fragile moment of isolation in the middle of the crowd. The attacker closed the distance with sudden precision. The cameras later revealed how quickly the act unfolded, almost too fast for the eye to fully process. One moment the man was upright, and the next he collapsed onto the ground. Shock rippled through the street. Nearby pedestrians stopped abruptly, unsure whether what they were seeing was an accident or something far worse. A few steps were taken backward, and a wide, fearful gap formed around the fallen body. The attacker did not hesitate or look back. The movement was controlled, purposeful, and calm. Within seconds, the figure merged into the surrounding crowd, walking away as though nothing had happened. There was no dramatic escape, no sudden run that might draw attention. This quiet departure made the scene even more disturbing. The violence had been swift, and its aftermath was left behind without explanation. As the man lay motionless, the city struggled to respond. Traffic slowed, horns sounded, and people gathered at a cautious distance. The cameras continued to record, capturing confusion, fear, and disbelief from multiple angles. What had just occurred was undeniable, yet hard to accept. In broad daylight, surrounded by witnesses, a life had been taken with chilling ease. The ordinary rhythm of the street was broken, and nothing recorded that day would ever seem ordinary again. When authorities began reviewing the recordings, the true scale of what had been captured slowly became clear. Screens filled with overlapping angles showed the same stretch of street from different viewpoints. Each camera offered a silent fragment of the truth. Together, they formed a disturbing timeline that left little room for doubt. The moment of the attack, the collapse, and the calm exit were all there, preserved in sharp detail. What unsettled investigators most was how cleanly the act fit into the busy surroundings. Frame by frame, analysts tracked movements that had gone unnoticed in real time. A slight change in walking speed, a turn of the shoulders, and the way the attacker positioned themselves before closing in all suggested experience and intent. One camera captured a brief reflection in a shop window, distorted but revealing a familiar outline. Another showed how the attacker avoided lingering under any single lens. The footage did not just show what happened, it showed how carefully it had been designed to happen. As the clips were shared among investigative teams, the case took on a new urgency. This was not a crime hidden in darkness. It happened openly, in a place where people felt safe. The clarity of the footage made the violence feel closer, more personal. Officers recognized landmarks they passed every day, now frozen in time around a brutal act. The recordings became both evidence and a reminder of how quickly normal life could turn into chaos. Public attention soon followed. Once the existence of the footage became known, concerns spread through the city. People replayed the images in their minds, imagining themselves in the same space. The cameras had done their job, but they also exposed a chilling reality. Safety was not guaranteed by sunlight or crowds. The city had watched a murder unfold, and now it demanded answers. As investigators turned away from the footage and toward the victim's life, a different kind of darkness began to surface. At first glance, everything appeared ordinary. The man held steady work, maintained familiar routines, and was known as someone who kept to himself. There were no obvious signs of danger or conflict that might explain such a public and deliberate attack. Yet true crime often hides in the details that are easy to overlook. Financial records revealed recent strain that had not been shared with many people. Subtle changes in spending patterns suggested growing pressure rather than comfort. Digital activity uncovered connections that had quietly faded but were never fully cut off. Old disputes, once considered settled, appeared in messages and records, showing unresolved tension that had lingered for years. These discoveries shifted the investigation from the idea of randomness to something far more personal. Further examination revealed that the victim had recently made decisions that affected others in unexpected ways. These choices created resentment, even if it remained hidden behind polite behavior. Investigators noted how certain events lined up with the timing of the attack, forming a pattern that could not be ignored. Each new piece of information narrowed the list of possible motives, even as it raised uncomfortable questions about how well people truly know those around them. What made this stage of the case unsettling was the contrast between the victim's quiet life and the violent end it met. The attack had been swift and public, yet its roots were buried deep in private moments and long-standing frustrations. The murder no longer seemed like an act of chance or madness. It began to look like the final outcome of pressures that had been building silently, waiting for the right moment to surface in the most shocking way possible. Despite the growing clarity around motive, one critical problem continued to frustrate investigators. The footage showed movements and patterns, but it never delivered a clear image of the attacker's face. Shadows, angles, and passing objects worked together to hide the most important detail. Each time analysts thought they were close, the image blurred or cut away. This missing piece slowed progress and allowed uncertainty to hang over the case. The breakthrough came from a camera almost everyone had ignored. Positioned high above a service road, it was designed to monitor traffic flow, not people. The footage was grainy and overlooked in the early review. When it was finally examined, investigators noticed a small but repeated action. The attacker moved in a distinctive way while walking, a habit unlikely to be copied or faked. This detail appeared again and again across different recordings, linking separate moments into one continuous trail. Once this pattern was identified, everything changed. Investigators searched previous cases and records, looking for individuals known for the same behavior. The search narrowed quickly. The same movement appeared in older surveillance clips from unrelated incidents. What had once seemed insignificant now stood out clearly. The attacker was no longer just a shadow among many. This discovery transformed the footage into something powerful. It was no longer just evidence of a crime, but a signature that pointed directly to a real person. The idea that the cameras had missed the most obvious detail faded. Instead, it became clear that the truth had always been there, waiting for someone to know where to look. The case moved forward with renewed momentum, and the sense of escape that once protected the attacker began to disappear. With a strong lead finally in place, the investigation moved rapidly. Analysts began mapping the attacker's movements beyond the immediate crime scene, using footage from streets, shops, and public transport systems. Each camera added another piece to the puzzle, extending the timeline forward and backward in time. What once looked like a clean escape now appeared fragmented and flawed. Small gaps were filled as data from different sources overlapped, creating a clear picture of the path taken through the city. Travel records supported what the cameras showed. Entry and exit points from stations lined up with the distinctive movement identified earlier. Timing matched perfectly, leaving little room for coincidence. Investigators also examined behavior before the attack, noticing moments of hesitation that contradicted the image of total control. These details suggested planning, but also pressure, as though the attacker was aware that one mistake could undo everything. As the evidence grew, the net tightened. Each attempt to remain unnoticed had left behind another trace. The choice to act in daylight, meant to create confusion and anonymity, instead produced an overwhelming amount of information. Witness movements, vehicle locations, and digital signals all converged on the same conclusion. The city itself became a witness, its systems working together to expose what one person tried to hide. When authorities moved in, there was no dramatic confrontation. The weight of the evidence spoke for itself. The confidence that once surrounded the crime had evaporated. The attacker's careful plan collapsed under scrutiny, undone by the very environment that had been used as cover. What began as a chilling act in public view was now a closed circle, leaving no clear path of escape and no doubt about what had happened. The investigation reached its final phase as every piece of evidence was brought together under the same light. The final chapter of the case unfolded quietly, yet its weight was impossible to ignore. With the investigation complete, the footage was archived, but its impact remained alive in the minds of those who had seen it. The recordings no longer belonged only to law enforcement. They became part of a larger conversation about safety, visibility, and the false comfort of routine. Streets that once felt familiar now carried an unsettling awareness of how quickly everything could change. The city responded in subtle ways. People adjusted their habits, paid closer attention to their surroundings, and looked differently at the cameras mounted above them. These devices, once dismissed as background fixtures, were now understood as permanent witnesses. They did not intervene or prevent the crime, but they ensured it could not be denied or erased. The truth had been captured without emotion, preserved exactly as it happened. For those studying the case, the most chilling lesson was how ordinary the day had been. There was no warning, no visible sign of danger before the violence erupted. The crime did not rely on darkness or isolation. It relied on confidence and the assumption that no one was truly watching. That belief collapsed under the scrutiny of evidence and time. As the story reached its conclusion, it left behind a lasting discomfort rather than closure. Justice had been served, yet the sense of vulnerability remained. The case stood as a reminder that safety is not guaranteed by crowds or daylight. In the end, the same bright light that witnessed the crime also revealed the truth, ensuring the events of that day would never be forgotten or dismissed as just another moment in the city's endless routine.